One of the biggest things that I keep on honing in now is that we have, and excuse my language, but it's this mental masturbation on, obsessing over optimum. Oh, what is best? And, always looking for that novelty. And I feel like people will spend so much time planning the plan to then plan the plan to execute the plan that by the time we come to the execution piece of it, they're already tapped out on the energy. It's like, so, what is the most optimal anti-inflammatory food items that I can have, and watch food frequency and meal frequency? And I'm like...
It isn't about being perfect. It's about being better. Hello, my name is Dr. Stephanie Stima, and I host expert discussions with thought leaders in all facets of health, including nutrition, fitness, hormones, stress management, performance, recovery, longevity, health span, and energy production. On this show, we discuss complex science, but then we also alchemize it into actionable, everyday living. The ultimate goal with the show is to assist you in making informed decisions about your health and to catapult you into being the hero in your own life. Hey friends, welcome to another episode. We do them every week of Better with Dr. Stephanie. It's me, your host, Dr. Stephanie Estima. And today I have a wonderful conversation with a bikini Olympian champion. Her name, Nathalia Melo. She is also a mother of two, a wife, and she's a globally recognized fitness coach. She was one of the first winners of the Bikini Olympia back in 2012. And she now has a coaching business that has helped over 5,000 women achieve the body composition goals and fitness journeys to help reclaim their confidence. And I wanted to talk to Nathalia because I have been following her online for a while. And I said this a couple times in the show, but she is literally my spirit animal. She says the things that I am thinking. So we are very aligned in terms of our philosophy for coaching and achievement of goals and what it means to sort of pursue those goals. And in this conversation, we talk a lot about that. So we talk about her journey to the Olympia, where she came from Brazil, literally, in apartments with cockroaches and like working all hours of the day to try and make ends meet. And then finally getting up on and competing, and then competing at the Olympia and winning it. And some of the lessons that she learned from that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we actually talk about all of those in terms of transferable skills and things templates that she would like to avoid and templates that she would like to replicate from her experience there. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. And it is my hope in bringing on an expert like Nathalia, who has reached the accolades that some of us maybe dream of or we admire, that sometimes you get to the top of the mountain and you're like, I'm here, like I have objectively said I have arrived, but it doesn't feel right. And I think what Nathalia does so beautifully is she, proverbially sort of turns down the mountain and screams like, there's nothing up here. Don't come this way. So she talks a lot about the things that work, the things that don't work, some of the perversions, we'll say, in the fitness industry. And then I think there's a philosophical return to the basics that work. So I hope that you will enjoy this conversation, and I would love for you to share it far and wide for your gym girly who's doing all the crazy stuff in the gym when really she should just be learning how to master a squat. This show is for you. Enjoy my conversation with Nathalia Melo. All right, and we are live. Nathalia Melo, I am thrilled to welcome you to the Better Show. Welcome.
I'm so excited to be here, been listening to your podcast for some time. So it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, when we were talking over Instagram, like, you are my spirit animal, everything that you put out, I'm like, yes, everything she says, whatever. It's like you always have me behind you going, what Nathalia said. That's it. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I joke, I say that I normally say what most people are thinking.
Yeah.
But they don't want to say it. And I'm like, my mouth is normally faster than my brain to make it stop.
That's awesome.
Here we are.
I love that. Well, you are, along with being a fireball and, of course, beautiful and all of the things, you are also very accomplished as well. You are the winner, I believe it's 2012 of the Miss or the Olympia bikini division, which for those of you that are not familiar, this is sort of the premier in the bodybuilding space. The Olympia is And there's the Arnold, there's all these other different expos and competitions, but the Olympia is the premier. It's like the NBA. It's like you're winning like you're in the NBA, you're the all-star, that kind of thing. So you are the 2012 winner there in the bikini division, as I mentioned. And I thought one of the reasons why I wanted you on the show, there's so much wisdom that I think that you can distill. There's so much we can learn from the physique building and the bodybuilding space, both good and bad. So we can really create templates for what we want to emulate in terms of what the bodybuilding and the fitness industry gets right. And then there are, like I was saying before we got going, bodybuilding is an extreme sport. So there's also some things that we don't necessarily want to take with us if you are not thinking of being a competitor. And so I thought we might start with your journey to the Olympia. Tell us a little bit about how you found yourself, having the desire even to compete. I'm sure that was not your first competition. There were several competitions. You had to qualify and all of that. So what does it look like for you in the years leading up to that particular competition?
What's funny is that my first Olympia was a year after I started competing. I wasn't the first ever bikini Olympia ever
Oh my God.
to ever exist in like 2010.
Wow.
I was one of the first bulks of bikini pros, like literally probably like the second batch or something like that. And it's funny watching competitors now. At the time, we were just told get on the stage and pose. And I'm like, okay, can we have a little bit more instruction here? And they're like, just like go there and like pose. And it's cool to see a lot of the things that we kind of winged it when we were first starting, to see people still do it now. So that's kind of the background. But the cool thing is that I'm going to have to go a few steps back to get to how I got to competing. I started lifting weights when I was about 14. I'm originally from Brazil. And my mom was your typical yo-yo dieter, like Latino background. You're either too fat or too skinny. You're never good enough kind of thing. I was doing the cabbage soup diet with my mom when I was like 12. It's like crazy stuff. And then I started going to the gym when I was 14, but my mom thought that the gym was a bit of a waste of time. So I would save my allowance for 2 months to be able to pay for 1 month of gym membership. And then I'll take the bus to go to the gym. And then I would go to the gym for 1 month and then like max out the time that I could be there and then not go for the next month. So that's how I kind of got introduced to the gym environment. And I think being defiant, the more my mom said that, it's like, it's a waste of money. I'm like, and I'm going to go. Watch me.
Right.
So eventually moved to the US, had a went to law school in Brazil. Then fitness kind of took a little bit of a backseat. Halfway through.
Did you say law school? You went to law school in Brazil?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Law school in Brazil is a bachelor. So I got into law school when I was about 17, 18. And halfway through, I started doing an internship in the courthouse. And I'm like, I have a very idealistic vision of life. And whenever I got into the courthouse, I'm like, oh shit, there is nothing just about this justice system. So I felt very discouraged. So I walked away from law, packed my stuff, moved to the US. So whenever I got here, $350, I was 20 years old, like literally just scraping. The place that I lived was covered in cockroaches. And then I start from like literally from the bottom. I start cleaning restaurants overnight to earn like $30, working from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And that's kind of how I got started. And then eventually I started bartending. And the lifestyle, and still kind of fitness was still kind of part of my life, but it never stopped fully being part of my life. But I had a lot of distractions. Then I found myself bartending, and I was getting white girl wasted, like shit-faced all the time. And
not to mention the crazy hours, like you're up all night and closing the bar at 2 and
when you have like that epiphany, that come to Jesus moment, that is like, I like to call that the fork on the road for me in that season of my life. It was like, I'll either go down the path of, hot mess express, like I see a lot of people here, or I need to take another direction and give myself a purpose. Like I need to give myself something to work towards, like something that it feels bigger than myself. And at the time I was, working, training with a trainer in the gym. Somebody mentioned about competing, and I didn't like the physique. Here's the fun fact. I did not like the physique. I didn't get into it because I was like, you know what? I want to look like that. I got into it because I needed something to give me purpose to wake up every day.
Because the bikini category wasn't yet around. It was
You
maybe
was the
figure and...
No, it was already the bikini category, but even the bikini category in my mind was too much.
Okay.
And but I went into it and I got into it because I wanted something to work towards, because I knew that if I kept on going the path that I was going, it wasn't going to be good.
Yeah.
So that's how things started to, got some coaches and start competing. Won my first, I don't know, like 5 shows or something like that. And then I turned pro and won my first pro show, qualified to the Olympia. And then that's when I was on the first ever Olympia. And, I'm very grateful. There were a lot of lessons that you can take from, competing, and the drive and the discipline and the resilience. Can begin to tell you how many times I cried on top of a treadmill. I hate it here, but I still have 20 minutes.
Right.
So get up and do with it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one thing that I'm a big advocate about, and, I've gotten a lot of heat from contest prep coaches, is that competing is being sold as this, you are the poster child of health. And for you and I, we know that couldn't be farther from the truth. There is absolutely, in my personal experience, nothing healthy about competing.
Yeah.
So
all the prep leading up to it, like I didn't, so just before we got started, my Betties, we were actually showing each other our trophies. So mine's from 2008. It was the NPC. I've competed in figure, but as you know, figure today in 2024, 2025 is very different than the figure back then. So it was really more bikini. Like it was really like what would be considered maybe bikini today.
Yeah.
And to your point, it was like everything other than like the 12 weeks leading up to prep, I would say generally healthy. Like I was, lifting weights, an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But then as I started having to lean out, it was like you would do that session and then you'd go back in the evening for like another hour and a half of cardio. And then your food, of course, your output is higher, but your food doesn't get higher to match it. Your food gets less and less. I still can't have asparagus to this day. I'll kind of look at it and like, maybe I'll have one, but I had so much asparagus. It was like, I could gag. I hate it. I still hate asparagus
especially when they were soggy from like you prepping in the beginning of the week.
Yeah. You can't fry them in oil. You have to, exactly. You have to like steam them. So they're still like, they have no flavor. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Keep going. Yes. We know that it is very much an extreme sport. I would agree with you 100%. It's like getting up on stage, very much an extreme sport. And it's not just where I've thought about this a lot, as you probably have as well, when you look at other sports, it's very much performance based. It's like, how fast can she run? How many goals can they score? How far can they throw a ball? Whatever. But for bodybuilders, it's like, it's your diet. And even in your off season, you can't really completely be off. You kind of still have to keep it in check a little bit. And if you are not built in a way that's able to sustain those caloric deficits, and I would argue nobody is, but if you can't sort of override your natural biological urges to do so, like that is the most difficult part about bodybuilding, in my humble opinion.
And it's interesting that you say that because, like I was saying, it's sold as this, you're the poster child of health. And because you're so insular in that environment, like all your friends start to become competitors and that behavior starts to become normal, like doing 3 hours of cardio a day. Oh yeah, everybody does it.
God,
like eating out of a Ziploc bag. Everybody does it. So you don't feel so alien because everybody around you does that. And then you think that every athlete, that's how they live. And that was kind of the click for me, because I don't know if you know, my husband was a professional rugby player for 15 years. He played, he played at the highest level. He's from Ireland. He played for Ireland. He played at the All-Star team that they have for rugby. We've traveled to a few different countries with him playing. And whenever we started dating, that was kind of when it started to click, because my husband was playing at the highest level in his chosen sport. And, he was spending 8 hours, 9 hours, like it was a full-time job. And the rugby season is long. But he still, come Saturday, if he's off, he can go to a restaurant, have his meal. I mean, he's not going to go out of town and like have 27 different desserts. But there was no obsession. And when that's when things started to click for me, because I was no longer just surrounded by people that did the same thing I did.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe what I'm doing is not really normal. And, I know that normal is relative, because if we go by normality in today's society, we're not normal either, because we're not severely overweight. So, but in the context of a fit athlete, professional, what I was doing wasn't normal. And by watching him, I started to realize that the math wasn't mathing. And that's when I started to question a lot of the things that I was doing, because the coaches that I had at the time were very much bro coaches. Like I had colleagues in the same, coaching team that had mercury poisoning from having too much orange roughy.
Oh my God, orange roughy.
Yeah,
yes.
So you see what I'm saying? Like, we were encouraged to wear like 2 or 3 waist trainers. My fingers were numb. Like the circulation, I couldn't breathe. So, there are a lot of things that it's like, oh, this is what you have to do. And it was very cultish. And being exposed to, a different performance sports, it started to open my eyes. And that's when I started to question. And kind of like I was saying before, I get a lot of heat now from contest prep coaches, because I speak about a lot of the things that I experienced and that I still see happening. People are trying to act like it doesn't happen. Like, I saw an Olympia athlete posting about having 700 calories a day and, doing 3 hours of cardio. I'm like, that's not normal. Stop it.
Yeah.
So, acting like it doesn't happen, it still happens. So we need to be honest and sell it for what it is. I learned a lot from it, from a personality development standpoint, the resilience, the discipline, the commitment, the ups and the downs, a lot of skills that have allowed me to build a successful business because they were transferable. But from being a poster child of health and fitness. And that's the thing that drives me insane when you have a lot of bodybuilders and I post myself drinking, I don't know, a glass of wine. Not getting shit-faced, but I'm, if I'm celebrating something with my husband, I'm going to have a glass of wine. You're supposed to be healthy. And I'm like, hold on, but is, eating myself sick and having a sick bucket after winning the biggest bodybuilding competition in the world, is that healthy?
Right. Did you lose your menstrual cycle? Was your menstrual cycle regular?
So we kind of touched on it. I have PCOS, so my cycle was always hot mess express. Right. So I don't know what was causing the not having cycle, because I never had a very regular cycle. So it's hard to pinpoint what it was.
Right.
But I know for a fact that what I had, like having a sick bucket near your bed after you win the biggest bodybuilding competition in the world because you weighed yourself sick, quite literally. I don't know, man, but that doesn't sound normal to me.
Well, it's absolutely not normal. And I think the big mind F, if I may, is that you get all this positive reinforcement. People are like, oh my God, you look so good. You look so, like, you're getting all of this sort of societal, like, you look great.
Yeah.
And then after you step off on stage, like post-show, you can't, I mean, women are not meant to be that lean anyway, but then post-show, you start eating normally. Maybe you reverse dieting, or maybe you go crazy like so many athletes do. They have like the pizza and the cake and the whatever, and then the compliments stop. And it's like, oh, okay. So what I need to do is to get back there. And so it's this constant, like, I have to be that lean all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that has really sort of waded into, women, like women who are not bodybuilders, women who are not in the space.
Because you also have a lot of contest prep coaches advertising the nonsense that they do as, oh, we can do that as a lifestyle. But it's not. It's just a slightly glorified contest prep version to someone who has zero desire of getting on the stage. And then you're constantly reinforcing that all or nothing mentality that is making the long-term success unsustainable and, like, quite honestly, impossible. And then these women keep on being stuck on this cycle of feeling like they're failing
Yeah.
Because before, like I say this all the time, if you were to put me now, as I managed 3 teams, like 3 businesses, 2 small children, a husband, a house, if I were to do now what I did when I won the Olympia, I would be in a mental institution. And then, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And then I
Yeah.
see women who are still trying what they did or what their contest prep coach did with them when their only responsibility was to brush their teeth and have clean underwear to go to work.
Right.
Now, when they have a lot of things to juggle, and then they keep on feeling like they're failing, and it's like, what is wrong with me? But what if we change the narrative to being like, what if you are not what is wrong? What may be analyzing that the strategy that you're utilizing no longer serves you because you're in a different season of life.
Yes. Oh, I love that. We were actually talking about this before we got going. You were like, are we training for details like the adductor tie-ins, right? Are we training for that? Or are we training for a mom of 3 who wants to feel vibrant and energized and she's able to show up for her children without snapping at them or falling asleep on the couch with Doritos in her hand, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is an important distinction. And I think part of it, and I think some of this comes with age, and a lot of it comes from experience that you have experienced going through the whole prep multiple times and getting that lean and the throwing up and all of that and the crying on the treadmill. So you either sort of hopefully mature into it with age or with experience, is that is not what the ideal female form should look like. Most women so you didn't necessarily know where your menstrual cycle was. I was saying to you before we got going, I lost my period for like 3 months after I competed, and that is not normal. So my body did not have normal amounts of progesterone, normal amounts of testosterone, or normal amounts of estrogen for those 3 months. But that even in that 3 months, like there are women that I know that compete that have not had their period for years because of how lean they have been. And that is like, when we think about this from an evolutionary perspective, like evolution doesn't care that you're competing, like you're as a human, like you have to procreate, you have to reproduce, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not you choose to do that, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But if you are not able to, because you are too lean, right? You've lost your period, your ovaries are like, this is not safe. You cannot have a baby like this. This is something maybe to pay attention to.
100%. And that's kind of one of the biggest things that I keep on honing in now is that we have, and excuse my language, but it's this mental masturbation on, obsessing over optimum. Oh, what is best? And, always looking for that novelty. And I feel like people will spend so much time planning the plan to then plan the plan to execute the plan, that by the time we come to the execution piece of it, they're already tapped out on the energy. It's like, so, what is the most optimal anti-inflammatory food items that I can have, and what food frequency and meal frequency? And I'm like,
So true.
Like, but, and this is a conversation that I actually had with a client recently. She's like almost 300 pounds, and her goal is fat loss, and for like her BMI is very high, and she's like, oh, what are the most like anti-inflammatory best foods? And I'm like, we shouldn't be concerned about anti-inflammatory foods, because what we need to focus on first before anything is an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Period.
Yeah, you just got to move, girl. Like that's it. You just got to move a little bit, and you got to make a little bit better choices.
Yeah.
But I think what you're talking about is actually very important, because I think when people decide that they want to do something with their health, it's like 0 to 100, right? It's like, I'm going to lose, I don't know, 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 100 pounds. I'm going to lose that. And they think about the outcome, but they don't actually think about the steps that lead to the outcome. So if it's 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds that you want to lose, who do you have to become? What are the what would that person do every day? Not, I will be happy when I lose 50 pounds. Like, who cares? Who cares if you lose 50 or 30? Like, what are the steps? Who do you become in the process?
Yeah. Yeah. And there is also like the whole idea of, oh, and then I'm gonna cut carbs, and then I'm gonna, I'm not gonna drink wine. and I'm not going to have any sugar. And I'm like, right, you have kids, right? And the person's like, yeah. And I'm like, do your kids like ice cream?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like having ice cream with your kids? Oh, yeah, it's a moment that we use to connect. So how is it that cutting sugar is going to be something that fits your reality and the things that are important to you? Why don't we start to talk about, aligning your goals with your lifestyle and the things that are priority to you? Because the moment that you start to cut out everything, it's gonna get to a point that you're gonna crack. And then you just keep on being stuck on that never-ending cycle. And that's something that I talk a lot of with our members is I will never tell you that you are not allowed to do X, to do Z.
Yeah.
That is not my job as a coach. I am not a bunch of grown-ass women. I'm not their babysitter. My job as a coach is to educate them on what this does, what is the outcome, and align them with their goals. And then put them on the driver's seat of making the decision on what is important to them based on, the knowledge that I gave them, and, allow them to make a decision, because I think that this is so much more empowering, even though I hate the word empowering, but it is empowering. It puts that person in the driver's seat of their decisions. I think that there is nothing worse than when I speak with somebody and they're like, well, I can't eat that because my coach doesn't allow me to. I'm like, the fuck? You're a 45-year-old woman. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like you have a 30-year-old man that has no kids telling you that you can't do that? Like,
right.
You see what I'm saying? So I think that is so much more powerful for that long term and having the honest conversations. I was talking with somebody the other day and she's like, I love to travel, but I also want to lose like 20 pounds in 3 months. And I'm like, hold on a second. We need to evaluate here, because if you are going to travel on a consistent basis, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but we're also going to have to manage expectations, because you're going to have a lot of outside variability that is not going to allow you to be as consistent to be able to have the outcome that someone who, is having homemade meals, who has, a more consistent sleeping schedule. So we need to analyze from individual to individual and simplify. Oh, yeah. Whenever I did that, I was training like 6 days a week, 2 hours a day. And I got great results. And I'm like, yeah. And, by the time you ended it, you're about to have a mental breakdown. How did that work out for you?
Right.
Can you maintain that?
This is such gold. This is such a rich conversation, because I think first, for your client who is saying, I'm going to travel and I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months. First, we have to acknowledge that improvements don't happen quickly. They will never happen that quickly. 20 pounds in 3 months, that is way more than a pound a week. And even then, I got to say, I don't even like a pound a week. I think that's a lot. That means you have to have a consistent about 500 calorie deficit, and that's hard for most people to maintain consistently for 12 weeks. So first of all, improvements don't happen quickly, and I think the other thing that's important is that they are non-linear. It's not just a pound a week on repeat forever. Like some weeks you're gonna, my husband right now is on this little fitness kick. He has several issues that he's sort of have been lagging with him for years, and he's just like, I'm just gonna cut out processed foods. And I kid you not, he has been doing this now for a little over 2 months. He's lost 16 pounds because he was like throwing back, whatever protein bars, protein cookies, protein snack, protein. And we're going to talk about protein because I think it is a very important strategy. But I also think that when you are eating a lot of processed foods, there can be a lot of things in there that maybe you didn't account for or expect, or maybe your gut has a hard time processing. So I love this idea of, hey, let's manage our expectations. I always tell people triple whatever you've set for yourself, like your client that said, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in 3 months, triple the timeline that you've set for yourself. So let's make that 20 pounds in 9 months, right? Yeah. And just forgive yourself. Like there's going to be some weeks where there's a quickening, and then other weeks where things just like slow down. Like they're going to slow down. It's going to feel like nothing's happening, but I promise you stuff is happening. Like your body's not stupid.
Yeah, I say that progress, whenever, like, especially whenever it comes to fat loss and like life be lifing, like it's
Yeah.
not going to be linear. It looks
Yeah.
a bit more like a recon on math.
Yeah.
Like it's like
Yeah.
all over the shop.
Yeah.
And, I think that we have it kind of goes back to the simplicity in making sure that we are focusing on establishing something that we can stick to. And, oh, like, is this healthy? Is that healthy? I mean, you can still put on a significant amount of weight by eating healthily.
Totally.
And,
Yeah.
and if your body weight's getting so high, what is more optimum, to be obsessing over the healthy food that is like increasing your weight to considerable levels, or to have a little bit more flexibility and understanding that is not everything is going to be perfect, and maintain a physical and emotional health that is going to be more long-term sustainable. And I think that that's the thing that we need to talk about. It's like, for example, if I'm talking to somebody, they're like, you know what? I eat fast food all the time, so I'm going to stop fast food altogether. I'm like, right. And then what?
Yeah.
Why don't we start, you're eating fast food, let's say 5 times a week. How about we reduce that to 3? Is fast food the best thing? Probably not. But it is such a big jump to kind of go from, 5 times a week, you can never have fast food ever again. What about, going from 5 to 3? And then you have the buy-in of the person too. They're like, oh, see, it's not even that big of a jump. Because even if there is a little bit of a delay on the aggressive results, seeing some results with so little, not so little, but it's a lot less effort and compromise than going completely off the things that they enjoy. So a little bit of progress is going to allow them to stay a lot more consistent, because they're like, oh, just by cutting 2 days out of like fast food, I'm seeing some progress. My clothes are fitting better. Cool. This is good.
Yeah.
And then eventually you can get to the conversation to be like, hey, how about now we maybe cut you 1 time a week, and it becomes a little bit of a treat. And then it's a lot of times what I see is that it starts from them to being like, you know what? I don't even want that anymore, because I'm so happy with the direction that I'm going, that I don't think that is serving me. And then again, we're putting the person in the driver's seat of making decisions that suit them. Because what is important to me is going to be different than what's important to you. And whenever I'm making decisions for people on what should and shouldn't be important, it removes their autonomy. And I think that is problematic.
I love that so much, because what you're suggesting is a gentle approach to change. It's not drastic, so it's not going to shock the body. And you've probably seen this hundreds of times over at this point, but you mentioned it very quickly. You said people don't even want it anymore, right? Like your chemical constitution, like you give your taste buds and your oral microbiome and your microbiome, like you give your body a chance to reset. And so you actually crave, maybe you want steak and some potatoes or tomatoes or whatever it is, rather than the McDonald's or whatever it is that your fast food, habit was before. But if you go from 5 times to 0, it's a shock to the body. And any human, you can do anything that shocks the body for a short period of time. Yeah. But as you've seen, people will rebound, right? Like they will rebel and they will rebound. Like they can do it for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, month, 2 months, and then they fall off the wagon and they fall off hard. And then for women, and I would love for you to speak to this a little bit, it's been my observation, and I'd like to know if it's been the same with you, that women tend to blame themselves, right? They fall off the wagon because they went from 5 to 0, or they went from like no gym to like 6 days a week. And then they're sore, they're tired, they're angry, like, F this gym, like this is not for me. And then they blame themselves. I failed on this program. It's because there's something wrong with my willpower, my ability, my capacity, who I am as a person. And then we get into the shame spiral. Is that something that you have noticed with women when we make too extreme of a choice, or what has been your observance there?
It's funny that you say this, because, whenever I start coaching, I start to see a lot of patterns of behaviors that, and kind of a little bit of my experience with coaches when I was competing was terrible. And for a long time, I'm like, I don't want to do this, like coaching, because I don't want to do to people what has been done to me. And I was like, it was literally a bit traumatizing, like the extremes. And I didn't want to put anybody through that. And I'm like, nope. I've never like touched a competitor to coach with a 10-foot pole. Never have, and likely never will. Because I know the line of the healthy and the unhealthy that I navigated. And so as I start to work with more people, I start to realize that a lot of the things that we were dealing with were a bit outside my scope, because there were a lot of like, there was a lot of mental health load that was very much outside my scope as a fitness professional to navigate. So I brought in a counselor because, you know, with that, like the blame with self, it's like that extreme mentality of all or nothing, which then leads to disordered eating patterns and disordered, you know, exercise patterns, which some of them can even be classified as exercise bulimia. And there are a lot of layers that we need to be addressing in order to be able to support that person long term. And I think that there is also a misunderstanding on, and this has been my observation, there is a misunderstanding on the order in which things happen. And I'm going to make sense here. So whenever I'm speaking with someone, somebody's like, oh, I lost my confidence. And then, you know, I stopped exercising and then my confidence went away. But I have a different theory. What I think that happens is that because these women have been stuck on that all or nothing pattern for so long, it's always like more is better. And then life starts to happen. As they start to age, what comes with aging? Children. They're advancing their career. Therefore, there are more responsibilities. They're getting married. A lot of times, I'm following the traditional path here, you know, getting married. So their time is not just their time now. So they're trying to do what they did when they were 20. They could spend 3 hours in the gym if they wanted to. If they ate too much, they would just go do extra cardio. Not that that's the right thing, but that's what most people used to do. I'm going to burn off. And as a society, that message is ingrained. You go to a boot camp on Thanksgiving Day. Oh, let's burn off the calories before you eat them. That is not normal. That is not like using exercise as punishment is not normal. But that has been something that has been ingrained. So they keep on trying to do the 3 hour of whatever nonsense it is that they're trying to do and eating lettuce and freaking ice cubes. But they're not able to sustain that because now life looks different. They have different priorities. And then they keep on making that promise to themselves and they keep on failing because they just literally only have 24 hours in a day. And then by failing, they start to lose the confidence in themselves. And then because they've lost the confidence in themselves, they think they're broken. They throw their hands up in the air. And then they're like, then I'm not going to do anything. And then that's when the fitness and the appearance and the feeling of control, it starts to dissipate. And then they think that, like a lot of times they think they lose the confidence because the body changed. But I think it's the other way around. They lose confidence in themselves and in the process. And for that reason, the body goes.
Right.
So the first thing I think we need to address is to stop the blame. I mean, I'm a big fan of personal responsibility and personal accountability because change cannot happen without these two things. But what if we took a step back and analyze, does the strategy that you currently follow serve you for where you are right now? Because if the answer is no, we need to address that before we start to beat ourselves up. And I would speak with women who are incredibly successful, doctors, Harvard attorneys, you know, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, like incredibly successful women. Oh, I just can't exercise because I'm lazy. I'm like, bitch, you're working like 75 hours a week. Like,
Right.
What are you talking about?
You are not lazy. Yeah. And
the thing is that there is something that I also call the toxic body positivity.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Which, how much time have we got?
We got lots of time. I got nothing for the rest of the afternoon. I want to hear everything you want to say.
Yeah, like
you want to say.
Because there is nothing that drives me crazy more than the toxic body positivity, which what does that look like? A woman, let's start with, for example, a woman has a child. That's kind of normally where it starts. Woman has a child. And then she delivers that child, and her body's going to look different. And then she voices, I don't like how I look. And obviously, we do have to have some grace. It's a big change that happens in your body. Oh, you look great. Oh, but you're so blessed. You should feel. And people are always telling how that woman should feel. But the reality is that deep inside, she doesn't feel as she should. She feels inadequate in her body, especially if she comes from a background of being somebody who's very fit.
Yeah.
And that starts to build up. And, people are always telling her, oh, but you should be so grateful. Well, you can be grateful and want to look better. They're not mutually exclusive. I can love my children and want to have like a six-pack and look hot as shit. And I know that people are not doing this from a harm's place, like from a place of badness there. But if it is impacting that woman's, intimacy with her husband, which happens all the time, but people just don't talk about.
Yeah.
If it is impacting that one, like I've talked with women that were embarrassed of going to their kids' soccer game because they didn't want to wear shorts in the summer. So they would watch their children play soccer from the car. But hey, I'm just so grateful. Like, that is not okay. We need to have the open conversations about the true feelings, because telling a woman how she should feel clearly is not working. How about we acknowledge, like, what would you like to happen? What would be a perfect world for you? Okay, maybe we're not going to be able to be ripped to shreds and have six-pack abs because life is a bit different, but how can we get you closer to that, to a place that you feel comfortable taking photos with your family? That you don't feel embarrassed to take your clothes off in front of your spouse? What needs to happen for us to get there? We need to acknowledge that there is a problem, because just pretending that the problems don't exist is making marriages fall apart, is making, women raise kids with resentment and with disordered eating behavior patterns for the children as well. So I see the good that is being tried to, that is the positivity and body positivity movement is trying to accomplish, but there is a big toxicity to it that people are not talking enough about.
God, I just feel like that's a masterclass in social dynamics. I love everything you've said. I think we forget that there can be two truths that can be opposite, and those can be held at the same time. You can be grateful and love your children, and you can also need a break from them. Right? It's like
right.
You can love them, and you can also be like, you know what? I just need your dad to take them for 2 hours, and I'll be back.
Yeah.
Or to use your example, you can be grateful for your children and also want to make improvements in your body composition, for even if it's just at the surface, even if it's just aesthetic, like I just want to look better in shorts. That is absolutely a valid reason to make changes. And then hopefully you stay in it long enough to reap some of the mental health benefits that it gives you, right? So like you stay in it, you start to see changes, muscle hypertrophy, progressive overload, all that stuff, metabolically flexible, good mobility, blah, blah, blah. And you also forge mental toughness, which will allow you, because if you're a parent, there ain't no hood like motherhood, you are going to run up against stuff with your kids are a mirror. They're going to show you everything that you don't like about yourself and more.
Yeah.
Right. And then they become teenagers, and then you're like, oh my God, so I love what you're like. There can be two things that are true at the same time that are not perfectly aligned. And I think that we've lost a little bit of that nuance, particularly in social media. It's like one way, or like you're either with us, or you're against us.
Mm-hmm.
You're pro this, you're anti that, whatever. You're his side, are you either his side or her side? It's this kind of tribal thinking. And I think that it can be very true. And women can often get caught in the middle for a variety of reasons. It's like, she can be sexy. She can't be sexy and smart. She can't be playful and intelligent. It's like all these different like dichotomies. It's like all of those things can be true at the same time. I love what you're saying. Love
And
what
it's
you're saying.
also like, for example, I cannot begin to tell you how many times people have said that I don't care for my kids because I take care of my body. And like coming from a household where I have watched my mom get liposuctions and recover eating a gallon of ice cream.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it was always extreme diet behaviors. Always like lose 30 pounds, gain 50 pounds, lose 20 pounds, always with that yo-yo. That's the environment that I grew up in. The Latino household is very like, oh, you're looking fat. You shouldn't wear that. Your belly's hanging. I know the impact. And again, that generation didn't know better. So I'm not holding that against my mom. But what I can do as a mother and as someone who works with a lot of women and a lot of mothers is to encourage them to openly talk about what brought them here. Because, Stephanie, about 99.9% of the women that I talk, it doesn't matter if they're 60 years old. Whenever we start to peel the layers, they remember things that their dad said or their mom said when they were 7.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because my mom used to tell me that I shouldn't eat that because I was going to get fat when I was 8. It is our job as parents to lead by example. Because even if you don't say, let's say that you're not telling your child, oh, you're looking chubby. Oh, you're looking X, Y, and Z. What is the other thing that kids do? They watch.
They observe. Yes. Yes.
Do you think, and I ask some of the ladies that I work with all the time, I'm like, do you think that your kid doesn't notice that you're the only person that doesn't put a bikini on and get in the pool? Do you think that your kid doesn't notice that whenever you guys travel to all these beautiful, amazing places, that you're the only one, like, in your family that, doesn't take your leggings off and sunbathe in leggings, and you'd say that you're tired, but you're just uncomfortable to get up because you don't like how you look? My daughter knows if I get my eyelashes done, and she's 7. Right. She's like, "Ooh, got your eyelashes done, didn't you?" She sees everything. So this illusion that, oh, I'm doing better because I'm not saying the things. I mean, that's an improvement, but they're still going to mimic what you're doing. And what if you're doing is hide? That's what in sacrifice to a point that it jeopardizes your well-being, your quality of life. What do you think that your children are going to mimic? There is nothing more powerful than to ask yourself, look at your child and ask yourself, how would that make me feel if my daughter felt like I do right now?
Right.
Because if the answer is, I would hate that, then you need to change. Because you are the example that child has.
It's always like the parent test or the best friend test, right? It's like, what would you say to your best friend if they came to you with these problems? Or what would you say to your child? And I guarantee that in most cases, your tone and your understanding and your compassion is going to go through the roof for your child or for your best friend. And somehow we don't often offer that to ourselves, which is unfortunate. And I think it's a skill that we all have to learn. I mean, I'm still learning it too. I'm not saying like I do this so well. Like I do
Girl,
not. Yeah.
I'd be winging over here, especially on the motherhood side. I'm like, shit.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So my question for you then is, how do we solve for that? Okay, so you don't need to get up on the Olympia stage to know that maybe most women have some kind of dysregulation with food. You mentioned a couple minutes ago, carbs. Like I can't eat carbs. Like I can't have anything. Like if someone comes to you and we have the sense maybe that there are some fears around consuming carbohydrates or their they have this sort of body dysmorphia. Like they go to these beautiful exotic places with the family and they're wearing the leggings and it's Europe in the summer. It's like 45 degrees Celsius or it's like 100, 110 Fahrenheit or whatever. And you're like, no, I'm going to just wear my leggings and my long sleeve shirt. You're like, no. How do we solve for that? Where do we start? Where do we start?
This is a very good question because, again, it is going to vary from person to person because everybody's reality is going to be different and everybody's priority. It depends also who you ask. If you're asking somebody who is, I don't know, 280 pounds, significantly overweight, their ideal is maybe to go from a size 16 to a size 12. But then if you ask somebody else, it might be, I want to go from a size 10 to a size 2. So it really is going to depend. And also priorities as far as lifestyle is, traveling all the time with your family is something that is important. We're going to have to adjust expectations. So understanding that one size does not fit all. And the idea that you're going to, and there is like this overconsumption of content that then you try. It's an example that I use all the time. I can go on Google right now and put on the Google search, the best chocolate cake recipe. I love chocolate cake, by the way. You're going to find 8 of them. I'm sure that individually they're all amazing. But if you try to get the eggs from this one and then the flour from that one and then the sugar from this one and then that, you're probably going to end up with chocolate soup, not a chocolate cake. So understanding that trying to do all the things, it's going to be detrimental. So now action steps, what can you do? Number 1 is honesty with whatever it is that the outcome that you want. Because another thing that I'm looking and I'm seeing very frequently, the conversation goes a bit like this. Question I ask is like, so tell me what's going on with your fitness. Oh, about a year ago, I gained 20 pounds and then X, Y, and Z started to happen and blah, blah, blah. And then there is the rest comes. And I'm like, right, cool. So if we were talking 90 days from now, what kind of results are you looking for with your fitness? What do you want to accomplish? Oh, I just want to feel good. I don't really care about the scale. Like the scale doesn't matter to me at all. That's a lie. Because in the very beginning of the conversation, you started the conversation with saying, I gained 20 pounds. Again, I am not saying that we need to have a wedding ceremony with the scale and that is an absolute, that is like, oh my goodness, it tells all the truth. But it's kind of like that pendulum swing of like, oh, I absolutely do not care about the scale. No, you do, because that was the first thing that you said. The second,
and it's okay if you do. It's okay if you care about the weight.
I ain't judging.
Yeah.
So, but I think, again, it kind of goes back to that pendulum swing of social media that is like, you shouldn't give a crap about the scale. Well, we kind of do. Because it is still a tool. And it is, technically speaking, it is the only tool that we currently have that it is easily accessible to people. I'm not going to be sending people to get a DEXA scan every time that I need information on them.
Right.
So obviously we need to take with a grain of salt and use it with other measurement tools. So we need to be honest about what it is that we want, because not having that clarity is only going to lead to frustration. Even as you're communicating with whoever it is that you choose to help you. If you decide to hire a coach, if you decide to find an accountability buddy, if you decide, oh, I don't care about this scale, and then your weight starts to go up and then you're frustrated. And then you're like, oh, well, but X, Y, and Z, but that wasn't your goal. So we need clarity on what the outcome is. For me, that's the first thing, because we cannot do anything without clarity on goal. Second, lifestyle. Let's say that you're somebody that has a bunch of kids and you're working, 60 hours a week. And your kids have 27 different extracurricular activities. And then you're like, you know what? I'm going to train 6 days a week for an hour and a half, 2 hours. What time?
Yeah.
So we need objectivity also with what is real. What is something that you can realistically commit to? Because more is not always better if it's going to make you burn the candle on both ends. And then from a nutrition standpoint, very similar to the exercise. do we need to go like balls to the walls right out of the gate? No, because you're going to lose steam. And at some point it's going to crack because life be lifing. And, there's something that drives me crazy. It's like, I'm going to take a break on the holidays. And I'm like, holidays, taxes, seasons, and death are the very few certainties that we have in life. So if you want something that is going to be, long-term stuff, what makes you think that putting a pause every time that something that it is guaranteed happens? It's life. Like, it is going to keep on happening. So how about we learn how to work with the things that are going to happen in life? Kids are going to get sick. How are you going to be able to adapt? Like, let's say, it's hard for you to get to the gym. Ideally speaking, you'd like to train from the gym, but is it something that is realistic for this season of life that you're currently in?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to think about bringing things home from a workout standpoint, at least for now, because something is always going to be better than nothing. And I think that also, and then the last thing is understanding that life is going to be filled with seasons, and, always that idea that you're going to wait and that you're going to wait and that you're going to wait is what happens a lot of times when I'm speaking with somebody that they're like, oh my goodness, I never thought that I was going to be here.
I'll start in January.
I start in January, and because if you look at it, I've talked about this all the time. If you look at it, let's start from January. January, it's like gonna go hard. Oh, but you know what? I'm so tired. It's cold. I'm so demotivated. It's cold. I'm gonna wait a little bit more. Then February comes, still a bit cold. I'm still trying to recoup from, the holidays. And then March comes, it's spring break. Can't do that now because spring break's coming. And in April, maybe you might be able to do it. But then May, at least in Texas, is already when the school break starts. And that's summer. It's back to school. And then it's the fall break. And it never ends. There's always going to be a reason. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does. Yeah, this is really lovely. And I think I'm getting a lot of value from this conversation because I think any professional worth their salt knows the value of coming back to basics. And this is like the philosophical premise for the basics of body composition changes. It's like, I've been making notes as you've been talking. Like, first is honesty. What's the outcome that you want? Don't say, I gained 20 pounds, but I don't care about the scale. Like, it's okay to care about the scale. Can we give everybody permission? You can, and actually, I'll just very quickly, you said, I hate the word empowerment. And I had like a visceral reaction. I literally did a talk on why this word needs to die, because it implies that I'm giving you the power. I want to empower you. It's like, no, I am not going to give you anything, because so there's two things that can happen. If you're successful, it's because I empowered you. So it's not actually the person who did the work. It's not actually their victory. It's mine. And if they fail, then it's like, well, you had all the tools because I empowered you. So it's your fault. I can't stand this word. I used to say it, and then I kind of was thinking, like, I probably think too much, but I was like, this word, what does it even mean? And it's this falsehood. Like, I'm going to empower you. No, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to give you information, and you are going to do the work.
And every boss babe, I hate boss babe too, on social media is like, I want to empower everybody. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Oh, excuse me. I don't know if I can say this, but
that's okay. Okay, so let's actually double click a little bit on the nutrition and the lifestyle. I wanted to, are there some principles that whether you're someone who is 45, 280 pounds, or you're 52 and, I don't know, I'm just making numbers up, 150 pounds, and we like weight loss is the goal or body recomp is the goal, are there some foundational principles that where we can, create bespoke plans for people? We can create customized plans for people and individualize them. But are there certain, we'll say, ground rules for protein consumption? Are there ground rules for movement patterning? Like, do we think that we want to prioritize resistance training, let's say, over cardio, or is it vice versa? Like, what are some of the things that you think about because when we're talking about weight loss, it's really fat loss, and really a layer deeper is actually body recomposition, right? So it's not so much we just want to lose fat, but we'd like to maybe replace the fat with some muscle, hopefully. So what are your thoughts on kind of some of those foundational principles? We can get a little specific in terms of what you think about with protein, even carbohydrates and fat consumption, and then movement patterning as well.
Yeah. So whenever we always work everything on the nutritional side from the protein up. So the protein is always going to be the foundation, especially because of the demographic that I work with. It's like yours, very perimenopausal, menopausal. And, we also need to look at it from a historical standpoint. Whenever we kind of reverse engineer the age of somebody who is perimenopausal or menopausal now, we're talking about that demographic that is either the child of someone that is, the skinny is better at all costs, or cyclical
Nothing
dieting.
tastes as good as skinny feels. I remember
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
So you're either the child of that generation or you are that generation. So, I think that honing in on the protein is a very important foundational piece, because what I see a lot of times is, especially with the more like 50, 60, 70 demographic that we have, whenever you look at their diet, it's like barely any protein. And then they're starting to show signs of, a significant loss of bone density and, bone breakage, because they haven't been able to keep their muscle, their bones, all of that. So ideally speaking, in a perfect universe, I like to look at anywhere between 1.5 to 2 grams per kilo. I go by kilo. It's just easier on my brain.
Yep.
1.5 to 2 grams per kilo. Depending on the person, we might push to 2.2, but the evidence is not really there for aggressive protein consumption beyond 2.2, 2.3.
So what you're talking about for pounds for my Americans is something like 0.7 grams per pound up to a maximum of like one gram per pound. Yeah.
Yeah. And the maximum is more from a sustainability standpoint than, an outcome that is going to be detrimental. It's not going to be detrimental if you go over that. But we also need to look that people don't live in a vacuum. People live people are like multidimensional. So in a perfect universe, considering thermal effect of food, considering, the like how it manages your hunger, like having a bunch of protein and fiber rich and all of that. Yeah, perfect scenario. But people don't live in a vacuum. People go to dinners. People have to network. People have to take clients people go to birthday parties. So, we also need to look at that. So I like to keep it at that 2 grams per kilo. And then everything else is going to be, you're going to split between carbs and fats. Keeping a good amount of fat to make sure that we're also supporting hormonal health is important. I don't like to get, and then on the other side of the token, I don't like to get very aggressive with the carbs and, we're going to completely slash carbs, because again, is it realistic? Do people live in a vacuum? Is it like everything you look has carbs? So might be able to stick with it for 4 weeks, but then what?
Right.
And in the context also is still of the protein. I had a conversation with somebody about this yesterday. Perfect universe is at least 1.5. But if I'm speaking with someone that is coming from having virtually no protein, does it make sense? Let's say that person is consuming like 0.5 gram per kilo. Just example, very little. If I take that person from 0.5 straight into like 2 or even 1.5, it's too much of a jump.
Yeah. It's really hard on the gut too, especially if she's aged. Like if she's 45, 55, like the lining of the gut also ages too. It's harder to assimilate those amino acids. Yeah.
Right. So, and from a sustainability standpoint as well. From a compliance standpoint.
Right.
So optimum idea, perfect universe, 1.5 to 2. But we're going to have to do that incrementally because, again, people don't live in a vacuum. So, and that's something that we'll have discussions with some, like when we're working with someone, they're trying to understand. And they're like, oh, but the optimum that you're saying is about that 1.52. And I'm like, right. But we also need to look at the individual. And whenever we started, the baseline that you came to us was something that it wouldn't make sense for us to go straight into the optimum. And that's why I have such a problem, a beef, no pun intended, with the idea of optimum, because optimum also is going to be relative.
Right. Yeah, that's good. And that's like the example you gave earlier. You said, you have 5 times, you're going 5 times for fast food. Like, let's just bring it down to 3. It's the same principle, but in reverse. It's just like, let's just use a gradient here. We're not going to go from 0 to 100. We're not going to go from half a gram per kg all the way up to 2 grams per kg. We're going to go nice and slow. And I think that there's a grace and an elegance to that is just not, it's just not appreciated. Like, our bodies take time. It takes longer than you want. I know your brain, you've already decided, but your body doesn't. It's just like, if I had my way, I would have much bigger delts than I do. But I don't, because I have to work on it and I have to keep working on it. It's a lifelong endeavor. And what you're talking about really is synergistic with that, in that we're just going to take it low and slow, baby. Low and slow and easy. It doesn't have to be hard. And this is where we get, you've talked about compliance a couple of times now. And I think that this is probably where you're seeing coaches like yourself, where we're going to see better compliance. We're going to see better compliance when it's gentle and it's not such a shock to the body. Like going from 0.5 grams per kilogram to 2 grams per kilogram of protein, like, you are going to be so bloated and so distended and in so much pain that, like I was saying, especially if that woman is like 45 or 55, she's never consumed that amount of protein in her life. There's degradation to the intestinal, like the gut lining anyway, just as a natural function of aging. She's going to have a hard time with that amount of protein. That's going to hurt. So we want to be smart. We want to be smart about this, which is what I hear you saying, which is so beautiful.
And I think that also, especially, whenever you're talking about people that have been athletes at some point in their lives, and then things kind of fell off to the wayside and they're finding themselves in a place they've never been before. There is this, like, they're terrified of failure. Terrified. And one of the things I tell people, if you are working with a fitness professional or with anybody for that matter that promises you no failure at all, run the other way, because they're lying. Failure is going to be part of the process. And I'm not talking about like absolute failures and that you are going to roll in crap and like stay there. What I'm saying is that, like, relative failure, it's not going to be perfect every single week. You are not going to have like 115% compliance and take every single workout for like every single day, and every single workout is going to be the best workout that you had in your life. Most of them are going to be mediocre. And because, again, people don't live in a vacuum. There are other variables of life that we need to take into account, especially if we're talking about perimenopausal, menopausal women. Sleep might be messed up. A lot of times these women are in a season of life. They are at a higher tier of their career. So there is going to be higher stress levels. So, expecting nothing but perfection and that you're going to have no bumps on the road is delusional. So preparing and having those honest conversations, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you're coming to me expecting to have zero failure, I'm not the person for you, because you are going to fail at some point in the process. But it's not going to be absolute failure, because you can still get up and keep on going. But that's where I see a lot of people falling, to the wayside and going into crazy land, is because they have that little bump and they're like, see, that's it, I suck. And then they just give up.
Right.
So I think that, again, setting the expectation.
The other thing I think is important, this is another thing that the gym has taught me, is like the whole point of the gym is failure.
Right.
Like, the whole point is to approximate it. You can get to it if you want, but if you just approximate failure, I think it also changes your relationship with failure over time. And I think that's one of the most beautiful unsung heroes of weightlifting. Is like, if you want to build muscle, the way you do that is you actually take the muscle close to and approximate, failure. So you cannot no longer perform the range of motion anymore at the same velocity. Subjectively, the weight feels a lot harder. All of these different things that sort of make up what muscle failure is. And I think that I think that translates into other areas of life. Like, you're like, all right, I had a lot at the Christmas party, or I had a lot at the Valentine's Day party, like whatever holiday we're talking about. And it's like, all right, just going to dust myself off and just keep going. Cause like, what other option do I have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just what you do. And, I think that there are two things that we can go into here. I think that there is also, people are constantly looking for that, kind of like you're saying, what we're talking about is like the fundamental, basic, foundational thing about aesthetic change, physical change, health change. But the fitness space has become so marginalized, which has any monkey can do a competition, have 6-pack abs, post a handful of photos, and call themselves a coach. There is very little regulation around it. So
and many of them are on peds as well. Like, let's just be honest. Like, even in the bikini division now, like, you cannot be competitive if you're not on some kind of gear somewhere.
Oh, I heard some of the stuff that, I don't know which bikini competitor, and but I heard, I'm like, what is even that? I don't even know the names. That's how much he's changed from when I don't know what any of it. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, I have no idea. Like, I legitimately don't know. And I don't really care to know either.
Right.
But I find that the fitness space has become so marginalized, and there is this overconsumption of information. And then people are constantly feeling like they're failing. And then, for example, I look at myself. I like to self-assess. And then I look at advice that I gave when I was 25, coaching people that have the life that I have now. And I'm like, what crack was I on?
It's like, I'm sorry.
I almost want to cover my life. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm so sorry.
I get it now. You know what I'm saying? And then and then there is that layer, people taking advice from other professionals, in quotation, that don't really understand or don't have the empathy for the lifestyle that they currently have. That's one piece of the puzzle. And then the other piece of the puzzle, and the marginalization of it, is that because there is so much information out there without context, everybody that consumes that information, even if they're not a fitness professional, they think that they can figure it out. And then they keep on stuck on this loop. But there is a difference between knowing what to do and knowing how to do it. Everybody knows that, to lose body fat, you need to be in a caloric deficit. Beautiful. Oh yeah, I need to be in a calorie deficit. Okay, but what does it look like for you?
Yeah. Over a long delta, repeated over several weeks. What does that look like for you? Yeah.
Right. What does it look like whenever, you do have events with work, and you have to host clients, and you have to, have a social life? What does that look like in effect without being in a vacuum? So I think that there is a big problem with the marginalization of fitness and a false sense of, I got it figured out, which then keeps people feeling like they're failing. Especially because we have a lot of people with quote unquote credentials giving advice. They're more sensationalized than practical.
Yeah, there's a meme. I don't know where. I'll try and find it, and I'll put in the show notes. But it's like, if you're 25 and you have 6-pack abs, like, who cares? Like, show me a girl who's strong when she's 45 after she's had 2 kids, or maybe she's 65 and she's had 2 kids and now grandkids. Like, that's the definition of something that I want to work towards. It's like, everybody has 6-pack abs. Yeah. Pretty much when you're 20, everyone has a flat stomach to some extent. because you have the gift of youth, right? And it's like the old saying, like youth is wasted on the young. Right?
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of like I actually did a reel recently on it. It's like relationship goals. You have like two people who are like 27, hashtag influencer, hashtag like fit couple, hashtag relationship goals. And I'm like,
yeah.
talk to me after you have a bunch of kids, you've been married for like 35, 40, 50 years, and you're still holding hands and calling each other babe. That is relationship goals.
Yeah.
Relationship goals when you're 25 and you have no other distractions in your life and you're both hot. That is easy to love somebody like that.
Yes. Yes. All right. So tell me a little bit about, let's double down a little bit on resistance training. One of the things I can tell you, I've said this before on the show, one of the things that was glaringly obvious for me when we would have new patients in the clinic, we'd have this intake with all these different tests, wall sits, push-ups, grip strength, all this stuff. Nobody knows how to squat properly. Like everyone knows what a squat is. Even myself, I've struggled. It is a very technical move. Like there's a lot of moving parts. You have hip flexion, knee flexion, ankle mobility. Are the knees caving in? What happened with your pelvis? Was your back, all these different, are you upright? Is your femurs too long? Do you have to, there's all these different things that go into a squat. How do you think about setting up a resistance training program? If I'm hearing you right, it seems like that is kind of that's the foundation that we build. We build a nice base of resistance training, and then we can add on some of the other we can add on cardio if we want. We can add on sauna. We can add on Pilates after we've established sort of this basics of resistance training. What does a resistance training program for you entail generally? Obviously, you're not creating programs for people that are listening right now, but what does it mean for you when a woman wants to recomp? So she wants like some type of body composition, fat loss, and muscle growth. Are we thinking about first starting her off with maybe more leg work, more upper body work, a combination of both? How many times a week do you think it's important for someone to be at a minimum to be successful? And then what does a gradient look like from there?
That's a great question, because I'm going to give the most fitness answer to ever be given. It depends.
It depends.
And I'm going to give context to the answer, and then I'm going to give some kind of like guidelines. Why does it depend? Because what we're talking about is the optimum. What is the optimal amount of time to train? What is the optimum? But again, people don't live in a vacuum. So if I'm talking about somebody who, lives, 40 minutes away from a gym and needs to do what she can at home, that is going to be looking very different than somebody who has like 60 minutes to 70 minutes to go to the gym 5 days a week and also has spare time to do cardio. These are going to be completely different realities. And these are things that we also need to take into account, because always focusing on the optimum is going to feel like the person who cannot be optimum cannot do anything, which is not true. So these are the things that we need to take into account. For me, my own training, I like I call the bro split, which is, body parts per day, because I enjoy training and I do have the time for where I am in life right now. I have a home gym. I can accommodate, it's not perfect every single day, but I can accommodate splitting per body part. But if I'm working with somebody who has very limited time, and let's say that person has 3 times a week, 30 minutes, is it optimal? Is it perfect? No, but we're going to work with that. I would put that person to do more full body workouts. Like, for example, one day a push and pull. And then the other day we do, one day push, the other day pull. And then the other day we do something else with more auxiliary movements. So it really is going to depend for where the person is at. I like to prioritize always the strength training in bigger muscle groups. There is nothing that grinds my gears more than somebody, let's say, and I see this in the gym all the time, and I want to bang my head against the wall. Like, a woman that struggles to get to the gym 3 times a week, because that's all she can do. And then she's in the gym 3 times a week, and then I see her on one of her workouts going to the gym to do arms. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm like, hold my judgment. I'm like, maybe someone's, I have this, I'm like, okay, hold your resting bitch face, because I totally agree with you. It's like, don't do arms.
Yeah, like I don't like, and again, listen, I don't have anything about training arms. If you're getting ready for a bodybuilding competition, if you have very specific goals to have these, sculpted, beautiful arms, and you have all the time in the world, perfect. But is it the best use of your time when time is a resource that you have very little of?
Yeah.
No. Or going to the gym and doing abs. I'm going to do arms and abs. No. Maybe incorporate something there, but it's going to be a much better use of your time to do the more compound movements. They are going to be optimum. Look at me.
Maximization. We're not going to optimize. We're going to maximize.
Maximize. They are going to be a better use of your time to do your compound movements.
Yeah.
They are going to utilize more muscle groups. They're going to give you more bang for your buck. There's going to be more energy expenditure. I don't like to look at it as energy expenditure because the amount of calories that you burn in the gym in context of how many calories you burn in the day is so little. But I do think that it is a much better use of your time. So these are the things that I think people need to keep in mind as well, is that, maximizing the time that you have, it's always going to be best with compound movements. And I'm talking about your deadlifts, your squats, your, presses, stuff like that.
And if you want arms, like just do some lat pulls, like work your back, like your arms work a lot when you work some of these bigger muscle groups as well. Like to your point, like deadlifts are a full body exercise. Like when I do deads, like my back, I feel my back working, I feel my arms.
I'm dead.
I'm dead. Exactly right. I'm dead after deadlifts. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
I love that. For you in your season of life, just to give to delight the listeners in terms of like a sneak peek into what it looks like for you now, not competing anymore, 2 young children, you have these 3 businesses that you're running, you have a home, married. You mentioned that you like the bro split. I am the bro split. Man, that's hard to say. I too tend to like that. I tend to like to do like glutes and hams. I like to have a quad day, and then I like to do delts. Like I tend to like that as well. And then a back day. What does it look like for you at the gym in terms of your split? If you're working out at home or at a facility, and then is meal prep part of your strategy? I remember when my kids were young, like that actually saved me. It was like having all my meals kind of ready on the Sunday at least, and have enough until Wednesday, so I didn't have to work. Because then if I had the opportunity to eat like all the stuff that they eat, like they like the mac and cheese and all this stuff, I would eat it. So if I had my own food already prepped and ready, that was a savior for me.
Can I put a little like a parenthesis here, because that is something that drives me nuts. Is like, oh, but my kids won't eat that, and I'm like, okay, but like kids like mac and cheese, nuggets. So are you gonna eat that? I mean, you can lead by example and expose your kids to the different foods, but dictating your whole nutritional guideline on what your 2-year-old wants to eat, it's not going to benefit anybody.
Yeah,
because you are going to be you're going to end up eating things that are not going to serve you, and you're not going to be setting an example of what are good eating behavior for your kids.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be watching you do that. Like, I bribe my son with salad for him to eat his protein, which is a nugget.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if you eat your nuggets, I'll give you the salad, because he sees us eating like a more wholesome, like healthy, like he's like, I want some quinoa. So, like, I love that you said that you're not always eating what your kids ate, because I don't think that is the best way to move forward.
Well, now that my 14-year-old is like really into weight training, he's eating exactly what I'm eating now, because he's like, I want to be able to squat, and all the things. But when they were younger, absolutely, they ate different things than I did, because their palates are just by nature, they're simpler. So they don't like all the spices, and they don't like all of the depth of flavor that adults like, because their taste buds are different. Yeah.
Yeah. So to answer your question, meal prep, yes, I'm very, and I think that this probably has been one of the reasons for like my success. I don't really care about all the fancy recipes and something different every single day. I think that it leads to decision fatigue. Mm-hmm. I hate it. Mm-hmm. Like, give me as little as possible to think about. Like, keep the barrier of entry and the friction. So I tend to eat the same thing. For lunch, I order from a meal prep company, because one thing that I start to realize is that lunch was my friction. Meaning, if I didn't have that prepped, whenever I'm in the groove of work, next thing I know, I would be having like Oreos for a snack, and you'd be the whole sleeve of Oreos because I wasn't prepared.
Right.
So I order from a meal prep company, and 2.5 minutes in the microwave, eat it, problem solved. And then for dinner, we have a whiteboard, and we do the grocery shop on the weekend, and then we write on the whiteboard what dinner is going to be for each day. And me and my husband are very like aligned with what we enjoy to eat. We're both like, we like to eat more whole foods, healthy-ish for the most part. We don't eat out very often. So whoever gets done with work first can start dinner. So we always have like a plan on what that is going to look
That's
like.
great. I love that.
In a lot of healthy snacks in the house, I love beef jerky would be kind of like my go-to, Greek yogurt, protein shakes, things like that.
Great. And it's simple. Simple stuff. It's not the exotic, crazy recipes. You got to go to Koreatown to get this certain spice, and then somewhere else to get it's like chicken breast and some veg and maybe stir fried something and some yogurt, all good stuff. And it's accessible to everyone, which I love.
I love when people are like, "What is your hack?" And then I'm like when I'm speaking with somebody, they're like, "Tell me your hacks. Like, what are the tips? Like, what? Like, I'm like keeping it simple so I can stick with it. And if I kind of fall off the wagon a little bit, not beat myself up over it, pick up fresh the next day and keep on going. That's the hack. But again, because we have the marginalization of fitness, and with marginalization comes, thinking that complicated is better. Yeah. Whenever people are faced with something that is simple, it's almost like, oh, like that's it, like that. It's almost like they are wanting for you to overcomplicate things to justify the investment that they made, when in reality, the ability to simplify something that can be very complex, it's what is going to lead to success.
And that's actually the mark of a great coach, is someone who can make it simple enough for you to apply it in your own life. If you hire, not that I don't know this person, but I've sort of seen him in the news, like this Brian Johnson character, where he's trying to live forever and he has all these drugs and has all these specific types of food that he eats at specific types of.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. It's not available to everyone. Like he spends like $2 million a year or something like that on his health. And the application for that broadly is does not exist. But I think that's actually one of the things I've been thinking about lately, and you've really reinforced, like I can tell that you've spoken to a lot of people. I can tell that you've coached a lot of people, because what I often find are the best coaches are the ones that seem to return to analog. So when I first starting off in my chiropractic practice, like you, I have to apologize to those patients, because it was like so much data, so much overwhelm, so much. But over time and with experience, it's like, I know what this person needs. This person just needs a bit of a break. They need a little bit of guidance on nutrition, like a small little shift, right? It's not A to Z or A to Z. It's just A to B today, right? It's just, we just want to get to B, right? And then it becomes B to Z. And I think the most experienced coaches who've been working with patients or clients for a long period of time just tend to get simpler over the course of their career. Like they become more analog. Like it's just like, you know what, you just need to walk, just walk a little bit more. Like it's just a very easy off the shoulder, like just a little throw out piece of coaching advice that tends to make a huge difference over time. And that's what I really have heard from you today and really appreciate in you.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's a fine line to navigate, because I understand that people want novelty, and it's almost like a lot of times when you are a service provider and people are expecting, because they're so used to the bells and whistles, they almost like they want their investment to be justified with all the things. And then I'm like, but it's not going to serve you. Like
I can make it complicated if you would like.
Like I can make it complicated, but like if you're already restricted on time and you're juggling and you have like 55 irons on the fire, how is that going to be beneficial for me to give you a different recipe that has the blood of a freaking virgin in the Himalayas? How is that going to serve you? Like I saw once a meal plan that it was like, you need these very specific peppers, not just any pepper. You need to be this very specific pepper from an Indian market on the third stall, on the right, on the I'm like, I'm already not doing it.
Yeah, I'm already out.
Yeah. Count me out of it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation, Nathalia. Where can people find you? First of all, everyone should be following you on Instagram. If you're not already, this girl, I said to you, you are my spirit animal. Your energy, your spitfire, you say it like it is. You say often the things that I'm thinking. So I'll make sure that we have your Instagram. So please follow her on Instagram. But if people want to find out more about you and your work, where can we find you?
Thank you. No, thank you. This was a great conversation. And sorry if I kind of like took over, but I'm very passionate about this if you haven't been able to tell. So I appreciate the opportunity. It was a great chat. You can find me on Instagram, Nathalia Melo Fit. It's with TH. My mom wanted to get fancy. So NATHALIA Melo Fit. And then my website is Nathalia Melo Fit. And I also have a podcast, which I would love to have you, not to put you in the spot. I know you're busy, but whenever you can.
That's a hard yes. That's an absolute yes. I would love
to. Good. Yay. So I have a podcast called Unfiltered Fit Life. Of course, the unfiltered had to be there. So Unfiltered Fit Life, weekly episodes. And it's a lot of the things that I align with, talking about these conversations, how to keep it simple, a lot of actionable things. So these are the main places. My social would be Nathalia Melo Fit across the board. That's my website. And then Unfiltered Fit Life podcast is my podcast.
This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I love your workouts, I have to say. I'm always like sending the fire emoji. I'm like, yes, girl, slay queen.
Thank you. Yes, it's true. So if you're watching on YouTube, I don't know if you can do this, but I have this is my little NPC figure. So if you're listening to this on audio, hop over to YouTube. This is my girl. Look how similar they look.
I know they look very similar. Let me see the face of yours.
Let's see if I can get her in there. She's got
they're like the same
face. Oh yeah,
yeah, they're twins.
Yeah. Same hair. Yeah, she's got a little. My son's always like, "Ew, mommy, you can see her boobies." I'm like, well, that's what happens.
God. So I have a little. This is gonna be funny. So because I don't know what happened, but my daughter is like very prudish. She doesn't like to show her belly button, short shorts. Like it's weird. But I'm not bad about it. So I have but a big frame with pictures of me in the Olympia with the medal and things like that. Yeah. And she's like, ew, your butt is showing. Oh, gross. And
you're like, that's what we do. And if you actually think about it, you're up. I mean, I know, but if you think about what we did, you got up on a bikini. So for figure, I had two outfits. It was a bikini and it was a full piece. Yeah. I think bikini, was it just one? It was a two-piece?
Just the bikini.
Okay, so you're in your two-piece and you are in the front, you're in your pose and side turn. And it's like you're literally sticking your butt out at judges and they are judging your butt. Like if you think about it, it's actually crazy that people, you willingly put yourself through this crazy diet, crazy caloric restriction, the 3 hours of cardio, all the things. And then you get up on stage in an orange tan and then you're like, please judge me. Judge me against all these other women that are beside me.
Yeah. And what about getting if we could do a whole podcast just about the nonsense, what about to pee? It was an event because you do not want to have pee marks dripping, but you could also not sit on the toilet because you'd leave marks and a lot of venues didn't like the 10 mark. So you would literally, I wish you guys could see me now, you literally had to stick your butt out and pray to God that you didn't pee all over yourself. And then you'd put the bikini back on and then there was the butt bite, which literally they would spray the glue up your butt thingy and glue the suit.
Yeah. So you don't accidentally flash someone. Yeah.
Right. Whenever I think, and I'm trying to explain, never met my husband, I was trying to explain to him because I was competing at the time. We've been together for almost 15 years. And then he was like, right. And I'm like, and then there is a glue that goes almost all the way to the front. And then he's like, but why though?
Yeah, but why? You're like, that's a great question.
I wish I knew too, but
Yeah.
I'll keep that on the file.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We will, to be continued. We will continue this on your podcast when that happens. This has been just a delight. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Yeah.